world, I would say. And you give a brief account of how kind of developed countries the world are actually performing in the scheme of things when it comes to kind of economic growth and economic development. I think resources of the world are plenty, and it's not that there are renewable resources only; there are non-renewable resources as well, which are actually an important raw material, which are an important resource towards the growth and development of any economy for that matter, right? So, country becomes rich or poor because of not only whatever economic policies that they are following, but also they are becoming rich and poor because of the kind of the allocation of the resources in the economy for that matter, right? So at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, it's important to realize this, I would say, how we are allocating the resources and in what way these resources are actually being used, all right, and to what extent it's getting used, where exactly it is getting allocated, all right, and whether it is being used for the purpose of what exactly it is meant to be used. This is supposed to be predefined and predetermined, right? So that's what I believe here to be true. Resources of the world are plenty. There are certain countries which have abundance of resources, while there are certain other countries which have a limited amount of resources. So for such countries which have got limited amount of resources, it's important that they actually allocate their resources in a feasible manner, in a manner that actually increases and enhances the output and enhances productivity as well, right? So we have to figure out the source of the resource, all right? To whom the resource, I mean, to whom the product is going to go after the resource is getting utilized, right? And how much or what quantity of production is going to happen. These are basic economic and fundamental questions which have to be answered first before utilization of resources happen. So this is the most important thing that we need to figure out. All right. So it's important because if you don't really, kind of make an estimation as to what would be the quantity of production for whom the production is being undertaken, and kind of from which source you are going to use those resources, right? Then it becomes a little difficult to probably allocate the resources at different segments, right? So this is the parameter of kind of economic growth for that matter. Making a country rich or poor is actually dependent on plenty of reasons. The country might be rich or poor for plenty of reasons. All right. Just give me one moment.
Mm-hmm.
A country can be rich or poor depending on, it actually depends on many factors, many reasons are there why and how a country becomes rich or poor, or why a country is developing while the other country is underdeveloped, or just developing for that matter, or a developed country altogether. Uh, the most fundamental reasons are actually the economic reasons, I presume, that whether a country is following the socialistic model, capitalistic model, or whether the country is actually a mixed economy, which is actually a combination of both socialistic, socialism, and capitalism. Because there are plenty of parameters and there are plenty of policies, rules, and regulations which are there in socialism and in capitalism, and also in economies which follow the amalgamation of the two, right? So it's important to determine that a country follows a specific model of economy for that matter, whether it is socialism that they are following, whether it is capitalism they are following, or whether they are following the mix of the two, right? A country has to have a clear-cut picture about what economic model they have to adopt in order to ensure that their economic growth happens in the country. All the three economies, like socialistic, capitalistic, or maybe the mixed economy, right? Mixed economy is actually that kind of economy where they have actually uh, a kind of certain features of socialism and certain features of capitalism in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Socialism can be good, but it has got demerits as well. A capitalistic economy is also good, but it has got demerits at the same time. So we cannot deny the fact that both socialism and capitalism are good and bad in their own ways, right? I won't say they are bad, but they have got certain limitations. That's the appropriate word that we can use. Both socialistic framework and capitalistic framework, they have got certain limitations. So that's the reason why, economic, stalwarts, they actually came up with this idea, or policymakers, they came up with this idea of uh, kind of creating an economy based on what exactly socialism stands for and what exactly capitalism stands for. That means they extracted the good features of socialism and good features of capitalism, and then they created a mixed economy. So there are plenty of countries of the world nowadays who follow the mixed economy model. When we talk about capitalistic economy, right, the major countries of the world like US, UK, Canada, they follow the capitalistic model. In fact, nowadays they are not really 100% capitalistic. They have become a mixed economy because of the limitations that capitalism offers to them. All right, socialist countries like probably China, right, or maybe certain parts of Russia, all right, they have probably a socialistic output, a socialistic outlook for that matter, and they kind of manage the economic policies based on the socialism framework. All right, but both, like I said, capitalism also has limitation. Capitalism actually means that private production happens, like the entire economy is under private hand. Production is actually carried out by virtue of business prudence, while in socialism what happens, production is carried out through by the virtue of government policies, rules and regulations. That means production is actually controlled by the government of the country, right, and not by the business. So maybe it's important for us to realize that business prudence is known best to the business people, right, to the business class for that matter. And if they are not allowed to figure out as to what extent of production is going to happen and how the resources are going to be allocated, how much resources are going to be allocated, right? If these fundamental things are actually under government's hand, it's really highly likely that the business might actually get a beating for that matter. It might suffer, right? On the contrary, what really happens in a capitalistic economy is actually that type of economy where production is actually controlled by private business, all right? And they are the people who call the shots because they know they actually use their own business strategies and business prudence to determine to what extent production is going to happen, what quantity of production is going to happen, and how much is going to happen for that matter. I mean, who are from where the resources are going to be pulled out, right? Sources of pulling out the resources, how the resources are going to be used, and so on and so forth. That means the entire production is under the hands of private business for that matter. So business decides, and it's not the government that decides, but government actually controls by way of rules and regulations, right? In the form that government has to be given a certain percentage of their incomes by way of taxes, by way of credits for that matter, right? And by way of a certain maybe kind of uh, financial or non-financial penalties at sometimes, right? The government has to get a certain amount, maybe I would say that taxes, and that's how the government actually controls, right? It has got no direct control over production. Government actually gives a full-fledged kind of you can say freedom for to the business to carry out the production, but at the end of the day, whatever earnings that they are getting, a certain amount of their earnings has to go to the government's coffer for that matter. Right? That's how things happen in capitalistic economy, right? So it's just that there are different governing bodies, there are different institutions which actually laid on different rules and regulations that they cannot actually kind of exceed maybe they cannot actually exceed this much of production probably sometimes, or they have to follow certain compliances, they have to pass through certain scrutinization and so on and so forth. Documentations becomes very important in this kind of economy, right? Like for example, in India, the financial transactions and financial or maybe shares, transactions associated with shares and stocks, they are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Board of India, which is called SEBI, right? So there are different institutions which actually scrutinizes and which actually you can say checks the actions of people in the business as to how they are actually carrying out their business activities, right? They just keep a check on them, and that's how they actually exercise control. So that's how things happen out there eventually. So talking about this part, it's important that any economy which is a socialistic economy or a capitalist economy, right? They have to have a proper approach as to where exactly they are headed. So nowadays, the best model is the mix of the two. That is a mix of socialism and capitalism both, right? If that is there, then economy would be a healthy economy. The developed countries of the world, like US, UK, or Canada, for that matter, they are developed because of the fact that they follow a mix of both the two, right? Maybe initially, if you talk about countries like US, they were a capitalistic country, but I feel that now the model is actually a little bit skewed, and they have also imbibed certain bit of socialism in their kind of monetary policies for that matter, right? So that's how things happen here, and that is the most important part of how of the fact that whether a country is rich and poor, uh, and whether a country is going to grow, growing or developing or underdeveloped, right? These are the factors that determine that. Now, talking about problems of global economy, right? I mean, this is actually the basic fundamental problem which I talked about, but there are plenty of other problems, right? Whether they are rich or maybe they are poor, or they are average, or they are developed or underdeveloped. We have to understand the segregation. Any country, as per the World Bank's guidelines or stricture, okay, the stricture which has, or the structure, I would say, which has been issued by the World Bank, that actually categorizes country into four parts, or maybe fundamentally three parts. First is the developed country, right? Then is the developing country. Third is actually um, under underdeveloped country, right? And second, I think third is the developing underdeveloped country, and third is the underdeveloped country. So these are the four guidelines, or maybe the four segregations which have been created by the World Bank. And any country is determined, when you talk about the financial status of any specific country, it is actually determined by the per capita income of the economy of that country, right? When we talk about the economy of a specific person, of an individual, if I talk about the financial status of maybe Bruno for that matter, so I would look into your per capita income. But if I talk about the economic condition of the people of Brazil, then I have to talk about the per capita income of the people of Brazil, right? So per capita income can be personal income, and per capita income can be aggregate income of the entire economy, right? So we have to figure out what is the per capita income of a specific country, of a specific economy, because the World Bank issues specific guidelines there. That if a specific country, if in a specific country an individual earns $10,000 and above, 12,000 per capita. If a person has an income of $10,000 to $12,000 and above, then that country is considered to be a developed country, right? This is actually as per the latest, you can say, the guidelines that has been issued by the World Bank, okay, to determine the financial status or the standard of living of the people of the various countries of the world, right? So as per the latest guideline that has been issued, it actually talks about the fact that in any country, if the per capita income of the people of the country exceeds $10,000 to $12,000, then that is actually a developed country, right? And if it goes beyond that, then that is actually underdeveloped country, or maybe a country which is developing in nature, right? So I feel what I could figure out is that the per capita income of the in US citizens, that is actually 12,000 and 12,000 above, right? That makes US to be a developed country. While there are many Asian countries of the world which actually just fall below that, uh, where the people of the country earn somewhere near like $9,000 to $10,000, right? Or maybe $8,000 to $10,000, yearly for that matter. So that actually makes certain countries to be under the third category for that matter. Third category in the sense that they are developing economy, right? But these are the technicalities of you can say of determining whether a country is rich or poor, and whether a country is financially well off or they are just struggling, right? These are the technical nitty-gritties of determination of the standard of living of the people of the country. But talking about the reality behind what exactly is there, I have given you a kind of a clear-cut idea that resources are the at the core of the existence of an economy. If resources are very less and they are scant, then obviously there'll be struggle, right? If you talk about the economies, like you gave the example of UAE, where they have where they're and the UAE is actually a desert region. That's a desert economy, right? They don't have those kind of green resources, or they don't have so much of oceans, and they don't have so much of river valleys, and they don't have those kind of big hills for that matter. They don't have those agricultural products as well, right? But still, they are making it large. They are growing. They are becoming developed now by for the simple reason that they are oil rich countries. Okay, the oil reserves are extremely high, and that makes the country all the more kind of prosperous and developed for that matter, right? And you can just figure out from the simple example of these countries that they are displaying to the entire world, that they are actually going on creating those high rises, right, those towers, and so on and so forth, okay, in the midst of all this kind of desert that is there. So that means that their economy is so developed that they can afford to create big high rises, okay, spectacular high rises, even in the midst of the desert for that matter. They can afford to hire the best of the best engineers. They can afford to hire best of best architectures, best of the best professionals, best of the best educators, and so on and so forth. So that is
Mhm.
actually making the country all the more developed for that matter. All right. Unlike other countries of the world which might be struggling at this stage. Now, Bruno, it's all yours. You can just come up with your point of view. You have already expressed your side of thought, but I would like you to come up with some more questions if you have, or if you have additional points to make here.
Good. Thank you, Dover, for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, and explain on this very important topic. So I think yes, there are plenty of situations, plenty of things to be mentioned on this topic is about what determines a rich or poor country. Indeed, the research, yes, it's important, but also the regime of government that is implemented in certain countries, like you mentioned about the United States, that I could took note right here that it's a capitalism regime. Yes, it's a capitalism country, all right. But in the same way, is a kind regime is uh, um, democratic, uh, but it's important to be capitalist, all right. But we have to um, balance the both, because the capitalist country, the people work a lot, focus on money, only money. Most of the time, will make not, let's say, good um, actions in order to keep the same level, to keep the country in a high performance, to keep the country with the power. It happens with the United States. United States, from a point of view, is not a good country, a country to be viewed, to be seen. And yes, this country is a good country. It's a good country in terms of they will help the world, but without asking any return. No, that is not the case. Actually, the United States has some intentions, let's say like that, when they are helping other countries. That's the point. That is a kind of country that has as capitalist the most important thing. All right, I think that's my point of view. Everything that they do, they will require a return over it. All right, that is not free lunch like we we talk right here in Brazil. But my question, I have a question to Tanver. From the India perspective, India is a capitalist country, is not a capitalist country. The India actually has a kind of 50-50, all right? The people actually has a kind of let's say feeling on to preserve, I don't know, the healthy, or do not work a lot, or the people like the money and we work a lot, we'll do everything to get the money. How could you describe the India in this context?
Yeah, absolutely. India, I would say it is a mix of socialism and capitalism, right? It is said,
Okay.
the very constitution of the country says that India is socialist republic, right? So that is actually, talked about by the very constitution of the country. But it is also some bit of capitalistic features are also imbibed and have also been taken up nowadays, and it actually helps the country to get better and grow for that matter, right?
Mhm.
Production happens, yes, like I said, production is in private hands, but also there are a lot of institutions that actually scrutinizes the activities of business for that matter, right? Like I talked about, if you businesses associated with shares or business associated with stocks for that matter. Okay, so when one is dealing with stocks and shares, those activities are controlled by SEBI, that is Security and Exchange Board of India, right? There are a
Uh-huh.
lot of compliances and adherences which have to be undertaken when this kind of transactions are undertaken. Then, for that matter, there are other compliances as well in various other segments. Income tax, actually, for a certain income of people, right, for earning certain slab of money, is actually kind of mandatory, and that basically means that whatever we earn, we have to pay a certain amount of money to the government by way of a tax on our earnings, right? So this also makes this country a kind of capitalistic in its shape and its approach for that matter, right? So it's not that government has to control everything, but there are certain bit of restrictions which are laid by the authorities, so that the government, the business doesn't go overboard in its profit making. Government allows profit making, but it doesn't really allow or permit profiteering for that matter, right? Same goes with kind of pharmaceutical products or medicinal products for that matter. Medicines are actually considered to be very sensitive products, and hence government has to lay down several guidelines, several restrictions in its compositions. When it comes to its compositions and its structure for that matter, the government decides what percentage of certain elements have to be added, whether they are as per the guidelines issued by the authorities, by the by the medical team, all right, whether they are meeting those guidelines or not. And they also figure out many other restrictions, such as date of expiration, date of manufacturing, so that any kind of product or any kind of medicine or pharmaceutical product which has become old and outdated and unfit for consumption, they could be weeded out from the market, right? So all these are actually restrictions which are imposed by the authorities for the purpose of the overall welfare of the people, of the citizens of the country, right? So this is important so that people don't really face a backlash because of misuses and because of wrong usages of wrong products for that matter, right? So this
Mhm.
actually makes the country a little bit capitalistic and socialistic as well. Our government is not directly interfering in production, but yes, government is actually issuing guidelines. They are issuing restrictions as to what percentage and what type of product has to become manufactured, right? If you talk about defense equipments, defense is actually a completely a state and government subject, right? Private entities cannot manufacture weapons or arms for that matter. It's completely a state of you can say area of specialization of the authorities, right? They are called the ordnance factory. Ordnance factory is that kind of factory where weapons are manufactured, and they have the seal of the government, right? So all these are actually done in public interest so that sensitive matters, sensitive products, they don't fall into the wrong hands. And if it falls into the wrong hands, then obviously it will create law and order issue in the country. So keeping this thing in mind, the authorities and the government at large, right, and specific team, they have actually done a lot of work to ensure that everything stays at the right place with the in the right hands. And of course, if there are compliances and adherences, it's highly likely that there'll be less of misgivings, and there'll be more kind of transparency. There'll be and life will be better for the people. That is the basic idea, yeah. Bruno?
All right, Denver. Thank you very much for providing this complete answer. See you next class. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming to the class, Bruno. I appreciate that. And if you want to do another lesson tomorrow, I'm available tomorrow as well. So we can do the second lesson tomorrow, or maybe as scheduled by you on Monday, we can do it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye,
Thank you for
Denver.
coming
Have
to
a
the
nice
lesson.
night.
And just one correction, handling the situation, handling. I think you this part was not correct. When you said handling, there was some issue which I realized, but handling the situation, handling of the situation happens when a situation has already happened. Okay, handling
Hal-
of the situation, handling of the situation was not correct. Right, handling the situation is important. Right, so this is one thing which I wanted to rectify. Right,
Very
so when a
good.
situation, yeah, when a situation has already occurred, then you can say handling of the situation was incompetent or was not good. Handling the situation is actually their responsibility. So this is how you can put the things. Okay.
Handling the situations correct and responsibility. Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Good. Good. Thank you
I
very
hope you
much,
like the
Denver.
lesson today, Bruno. I hope you like the class.
I like that very much. I like that very much. A very pertinent topic. Indeed, it's always good to talk about something that makes part of our life and it impacts our life. It's a thing that is taking place around the world, is taking place on our daily basis. I think, of course, that most of the time I don't have so much knowledge on discussing something like that, but I try and during the discussion we can express ourselves, express our ideas, our opinions, and it is good and fair to talk like that, to discuss like that. I
Absolutely,
think it is.
absolutely. Completely agree with you, Bruno. And happy to see you every time in the class, right? And I'll see you again in the next lesson. Take care of yourselves, and
Take care.
take care of yourself. And I'll see you in the next lesson. All right. Also, please
Take
confirm
care.
the class. Bye bye. See you.
Okay, I already did that. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Welcome. Bye bye.